Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for attending today's product training on, in my opinion, one of nature's greatest gifts, the amazing and fascinating beehive. You know, we live in a world today of multitasking and to-do lists, and we're trying to be more efficient and do things faster. And it's quite interesting to recognize that one of the most efficient and productive operations in the world is a simple beehive. In fact, they have mastered organizational behavior and teamwork. And although most hives stand less than 4 feet tall, they generate several of nature's most nutritive and impressive offerings. In fact, the honeybee is responsible for, among other things, honey, pollen, propolis, royal jelly, and beeswax, just to name a few. I don't know how many of you have ever been in the wild and have actually seen a live beehive and seen how massive they are, and you can only imagine the intense energy and the intense work that's going on inside for each of these individual bees to not only have created and built from scratch the place that they are working, but to colonize it and proliferate, to reproduce within it. It's really a remarkable journey, the honeybee, in its work efforts, and I'm excited today to talk with you about some of the Forever Bee products, including our bee honey, our bee pollen, royal jelly, bee propolis, and our loved aloe propolis cream. But first, let's understand where all this magic happens and actually who is responsible for many of these wonderful ingredients and benefits that we enjoy today. The hive consists of many different roles and functions, and interestingly enough, each bee knows exactly what it is supposed to do, and it performs its task perfectly every single day. So let's first start with the queen. There's one fertile queen, and her main activity is egg laying. So in a hive that can consist of anywhere between 80,000 to 100,000 bees, there is one queen that is designated to populate that hive and to reproduce. Next, we have 300 to 800 fertile males, and these are generally called drones. And then one of the most important functions in a hive, and this actually makes up 98% of a colony's population. This consists of sterile female worker bees, and they can be in the numbers of 20 to 80,000 of them. In addition, there are about 5,000 eggs, 25 to 30,000 immature bees in various stages of their development, and up to 10,000 newly hatched, which require feeding. This whole entire network is called the brood. And if you can imagine, those worker bees are extremely busy performing their individual functions to feed the bee babies at each stage of their development. You know, busy as a bee is not just a term that came out of nowhere. It's because when you look at the function of the beehive, it is truly remarkable. So when we talk about the worker bees, they each have a specific role. And actually, I'm going to go back to my previous slide. Let's talk about each of those roles. So first of all, we have the housekeeping bee. And the housekeeping bee is really part of the adult life of the house bee, and it's designed to clean the hive and the comb, to feed the brood, care for the queen. She makes orientation flights, which I find so fascinating. She will go out and create an orientation flight through which every other worker bee can follow and follow exactly. She will build the comb, she ventilates the hive, and also is responsible for packing pollen, water, nectar, and honey into the combs. So you can see the housekeeping portion of a worker bee is never ending. They work tirelessly, and as I said, they do it perfectly every time. Next up, we have guard duty. The guard bee has the duty of just that. This guard duty inspects all incoming collectors, and it does this by smelling their odor. How fascinating is this? So the guard duty sole role is to make sure that nothing bad enters the hive. So they will actually inspect every single one of these up to 100,000 plus bees that are coming in and out of the hive, and they will smell them to detect any sort of an assault or an attack that could be present in the hive. So they are constantly and vigilantly on watch to make sure that nothing ill can harm that ecosystem inside the hive. Next up, we have scout duty. Now, you may think that that sounds pretty typical of what they would do, and you're right. The scout bee locates food sources and passes on the information to other bees. But what I love about the scout bee is they pass along their information by a series of dance-like movements. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen this live. It is so fascinating to watch. She will actually circle around and around and around. She'll stamp her legs, or she'll wag her abdomen, or sometimes she stretches really, really long or tall. And we feel that this is possibly to show the type of food that she has found. So each bee will receive her communication not only of the source of the food, but also the way to get to the source of the food. This dance-like movement is truly extraordinary to watch, and I would encourage you to look this up. It is so magical to watch the form of communication and how each bee then understands exactly what to do and then is able to perform their various function. So the workers will observe her dance, and then they determine what she's indicating and they act accordingly. You know, it's even believed that different dances will not only show varying types of information to be passed on, but specific routes. And I think that is so fascinating, through a series of movements that each bee will know exactly where to go, where the food source is, and not only that, but how to get there. Next up, we have the collecting bees, and these are active as early as 5:15 a.m. And then by about 6:30 p.m., almost all have returned to the hive. So you think of a busy workday, these bees are actively engaged throughout the workday, but they have very regimented hours. So they will all set out as early as 5:15 a.m. and by 6:30 p.m., the entire hive is quiet and nested and all ready to do all of the functions within the hive that they were able to scout and acquire as they were outside the hive during the day. And then we have the nurse bees, and all of the larvae are fed during their first 3 days of life. So you have a larva in the first 3 days of life. They're fed with bee milk or royal jelly, which is produced by the nurse bees. Now, when we talk about all these various functions that the bees do, it actually relates to specific ingredients that come from all of these functions that are produced in a hive. And I'm going to start first by talking about the forever bee pollen, which is actually considered to be the ultimate superfood. Pollen is rich in protein and loaded with amino acids. And it's actually been called a miracle food and the ambrosia of the gods for a good reason, because it's one of the most nutrient dense materials in the world. That's right, I said that. It is one of the most nutrient dense materials in the world, because as the field bees gather nectar from within the flower, it also gathers pollen, or the male seed of the flower. Each bee pollen pellet contains over 2 million flower pollen grains, and 1 teaspoon contains over 2.5 billion grains of flower pollen. That truly, if you think of anything that's nutritive, 2.5 billion grains of flower pollen from different flower pollen grains, that is an amazing accomplishment for these bees to do throughout their lifespan. And then what happens is they actually will combine the pollen with their own saliva and their nectar, and they create these little tiny small granules that we call bee pollen. So bee pollen's created from the secretions of the bee. And as I mentioned, the high energy pollen, which is selected, is rich in amino acids, which lends to that high energy factor. It's a nutritive powerhouse consisting over 96 plus components of nutrients, and it's all acquired with the act of a bee. Now, when we look at potential benefits, not only is it rich in protein and amino acids, it contains bee pollen contains vitamins and minerals, and enzymes and coenzymes. In fact, due to the high level of nutrition in bee pollen, world-class athletes have been known to use pollen to support their high-intensity training and performance because it's a natural form of energy and it's a natural substance that's so dense in its ability to give the body exactly what it needs that it's very, very easy for the body to recognize, break down, and process on a day-to-day basis. You know, bees work all day at an amazing pace, which requires the nutritional support of pollen. So not only are they creating pollen, they're using pollen to sustain their high intense work days in order to perform those specific functions in the hive. And so humans have also used pollen to provide natural energy and stamina. In addition to that, pollen has been studied for weight management as well as allergies, in addition to male and female hormones, so dealing with prostate and menopause. And it's been studied by scientific schools and published white papers all over the world because hives have existed for centuries. They date back to the Romans and the Greeks, and even before then, before they were even documented. And those nutrients from the hive have been studied because whether it was in a homeopathy or an apothecary, or bringing it forward to today's substance as far as dietary supplements, we need to study it to understand what it is and how it will affect us and how we can benefit from it in a dietary supplement. But interestingly enough, pollen, along with most of the bee products, are some of the most rare substances that scientists cannot synthetically duplicate in a lab. Isn't that incredible? In today's world of scientific advancements, we have yet been able to discover a way to synthetically duplicate what is made in the hive of a bee. And I think that's pretty special if you think about it, what these bees are able to achieve and accomplish, and that we, as intelligent as we are, have yet been able to break them down and figure out what they are, much less how to reproduce or recreate them. So nature's actually created a proprietary formula that even the most bright scientific minds have yet to figure out. So it's pretty spectacular what these bee products contain and how they interact and the natural source from which they come. Next up, we have Forever Bee Pollen, or I'm sorry, Forever Bee Propolis. And this is known as the great defender and nature's healer. So scientists and beekeepers believe that propolis is created from polyphenol-rich resins from trees and plants. So these resins are naturally used to protect the plant and they heal damage to the plant or the tree. I'm going to say that again. Resins used to protect the plant and heal damage to the plant or tree. So it's like a natural defense system in a sense. And like pollen and honey, the bees extract the resins, then they add their own enzymes, and together create propolis. So it's a part plant, part bee collaboration. They extract it and then they add their own enzymatic support to it, and that's what we know today as propolis. So if you think about it, it helps to respond to any assaults that are present in the hive. It acts as an antibacterial, antimicrobial within the hive, and it's really a natural preservative because it comes from plants and from bees, and it's used everywhere in the hive to keep the environment as sterile as possible. Now, when you talk about a sterile environment, you want to make sure that it's immune from any of those attacks. So it's also used for immune support. Propolis is actually known, it actually comes from two Greek words called pro, meaning before, and polis, meaning city. So correctly translated, propolis means defenses before the cities. And it's used by the bee as a sealant. So bees line the insides of their hives. They repair the combs, they seal cracks and corners with propolis to protect the colony against harmful bacteria. So you will find bee propolis in every aspect of the hive, including the entrance point. So you have those scout bees that are scouting to make sure that nothing can enter the hive and disrupt the ecosystem of the hive. But then there's also a mat that they must pass through in order to enter into the hive. And as a part of that, you can kind of picture it if we were to dust off our feet a little bit and also maybe spray our feet with an antibacterial spray. This is exactly what the bee does naturally. So it will put this mat of propolis down. The bees pass through this mat, they pass through the scout bees, and if they make it into the hive, they are good to go. So, there have been studies that have actually been done. In fact, there was a really great study that was done at North Carolina State University and the Department of Biology at the University of Pennsylvania. They found convincing evidence that propolis in the nest could influence honeybee immunity. So it could affect each individual immune system of the bees, not just the hive itself, but the bees themselves. And the researchers noted it appears that honeybees have co-opted the defenses produced by plants as a type of social immunity or colony level defense against bacteria. So, like the bees, man uses propolis for immune support and protection from bacteria. So we're able to benefit from all that hard work of the bees without disrupting their hive and use this rare and wonderful ingredient for all of its many wonderful benefits. Next up, one of my favorite products, Forever Royal Jelly. Now, royal jelly is often misunderstood, but it's really considered food fit for a queen. And the reason we say that is because royal jelly is fed to select bee larvae from birth, and it's designed to promote their growth into queen bees. So the only difference of whether a larva becomes a queen or a worker bee is the queen is fed royal jelly and the worker bee is fed honey and pollen. So it's the royal jelly, that substance that gets into that larva and creates the ultimate reproducing machine designed to be the queen bee of the hive and designed to also protect the reproduction of that specific hive so that the legacy, so to speak, of that hive can continue forward. Royal jelly is a milk-like substance which a nurse bee secretes from the glands in its head, and it's packed with antioxidants, amino acids, and other unique nutrients like lecithin and collagen. It has gamma globulin and EFAs, and it provides the queen with the nutrients needed to mature quickly, growing larger than the normal bees and populating the hive with over 3 million eggs in her lifetime. Her sole role and purpose, and think about what a massive role and responsibility she has. She's able to do that because royal jelly is a special natural ingredient that we believe supports the lifespan of a queen bee and actually determines if the larva becomes a queen bee or not. In fact, today, as a natural ingredient in a dietary supplement, we believe that it may support healthy hair, skin, nails, reproductive health, vitality, and cellular health. So we can again benefit by that wonderful milk-like substance that is fed to the highest of royalty within the hive, the queen bees, and determines the lifespan and actually what the function and role is of the queen bee. Very, very special substance. And I am so proud to tell you, I have seen this formula and the way it is sourced, the way it is manufactured, the hundreds of thousands of quality tests that we perform at Forever Living Products is off the charts. We care so much about not only being effective, but being safe and sourcing the most natural ways that we can. And Forever Royal Jelly is just that. This is a formula I'm very proud of. It is power packed. And this is something that I take every single day as part of my core dietary supplement regimen. Now, we can't talk about the beehive without talking about bee honey. But I have to tell you, honey is different. I don't know how many of you have tried honey from other companies or from the grocery store, from the drugstore, or a Whole Foods type place. It's one of the oldest crafts known to man. So the Forever Bee honey is actually procured from our specific hives, and it's got this flavor to it. Bill talked about giving it to his son when we first launched it. This has the most elegant, it's so natural. You can almost taste as if it was literally scooped directly from the hive and put into a bottle. So let's talk about how honey is actually created. The nectar is actually consumed and regurgitated by a bee and then passed to the next bee. Yep, I said it, it's regurgitated and passed. And when I first read that, I thought, ew, we're eating regurgitated bee something. But then when I did all the research and the scientific studies and saw that with each passing, it acquires all of those properties of the pollens and the natural plant extracts and the propolis and all of the constituents that a bee produces, you think of it, this is truly one of the most nutrient dense, high energy, natural sweetener available today. It's actually one of the most famous products from the beehive, and taking honey from the hive, as I mentioned, is really one of the oldest crafts known to man. In fact, etching on walls of caves in eastern Spain dated about 7,000 BC show man's involvement with the honeybee. Honey has been found in sealed jars in Egyptian royalty from 3,000 years ago. And when the samples were tested, the honey had retained its nutritional values. Think about that. 3,000 years, and when we open the jar, it's retained its nutritional values. That means no degradation, no bacterial assault. It's actually retained every bit of the nutritional value as if it had been extracted from the hive. The creation of honey starts with field bees. They procure nectar from nearby fields, and then it's brought back to the hive. It's then consumed and regurgitated by a bee and passed to the next bee, and can happen literally over 100 times, with each bee adding its own unique enzymes, which together, all of those collectively creates this wonderful honey. So your honey can vary based on the network of bees that actually passed it from one to another. So picture a honeybee and all the different places that it goes. It could visit a myriad of different flowers and plants. It then comes back to the hive. It passes it to another honeybee who could have been out to another area and procured different pollens and different nectars from different sources, and up to 100 times it's passed, and this wonderful enzymatic process is added naturally to it, and from that we actually get honey. So the bees they'll then take the honey and they store it in the cells of the honeycomb and remove the moisture by fanning their wings. Now this is very important because if you think about it, all of this regurgitation has a sense of moisture or humidity to it. But in order to really bring it down or reduce it, so to speak, to its purest nutritive form, they need to remove the moisture. And so they'll literally sit in front of a honeycomb and they begin to fan their wings until they know exactly the time when all the moisture has been removed and the honey is in its most rich and pure stage. So over the ages, it's really been used in food preparation, as a natural sweetener. My kids actually even use it as syrup instead of artificial syrups because it's so natural and delicious. You can put it in teas, you can put it in warm milk. Almond milk is delicious. I'll add this to a smoothie or a shake just for that extra natural energy boost because it's so delicious, it's so natural, and it's so good for you. And really, it's really a special ingredient because of the way it's created and the network of bees that go to work to bring us this wonderful substance. Next up, you can't have bee propolis without having a topical product that contains propolis, because if we know what propolis does in the body as that mat through which each bee must pass and get rid of anything that they are bringing in that could be foreign to the hive, our skin can also benefit from that. So the aloe propolis cream actually has obviously a high concentration of aloe, because without aloe as the superstar, this product really wouldn't work as effectively as it does. But then it's very unique because we have no added water. Now, what this means simply is the richness of each ingredient is supercharged when you have absence of water. Now, water is important in some formulas, but in this one specifically, we found that aloe, along with the propolis, when formulated without the use of water, they join together in the most powerful, I want to say like an explosion of all of these nutrient-dense ingredients. Ethahexyl palmitate, which is it's an emollient or something very soft and silky that's derived from palm. Our propolis cream contains beta-carotene, which contains anti-aging benefits. It has carotenoids, which are known for their antioxidant properties, and they're critically responsible for communicating healthy responses to the skin. Now, when we talk about a healthy response to the skin, this is a great product to use if your hands are feeling extra dry and maybe a little cracked, or your elbows or your heels. It is such an uber rich, delicious cream that when you put it on, it's like, I almost picture it to be more like a salve, something that is in its texture, it's so thick and dense, but the minute you put it onto the skin and it starts to warm up to the skin just drinks it in, takes in all the benefits of chamomile flower and vitamin E, and the skin will simply respond with all of the benefits of aloe and propolis from the hive. Now here at Forever, we know that bee ingredients are very important, and I'm going to tell you, we are starting to see bee products pop up everywhere in the standard consumer marketplace. You're going to begin to see more and more products which contain ingredients from bees, and Forever's known this for a long, long time. So if you look at our product portfolio, some of our other products which contain bee ingredients are our Aloe First, Forever Bright Tooth Gel, Infinite Restoring Cream, and Forever Aloe Lips. All of these ingredients contain an element of one of these properties of the beehive that we've talked about today. You know, I love the beehive. It's a fascinating ecosystem to me. They work hard, they produce the finest substance, and we get to benefit from all of that wonderful experience they have in creating a hive, feeding a hive, keeping it sterile, and then allowing us to enjoy the benefits. I hope you'll try one of our bee products and get the same experience that I have when I take them. They're truly a remarkable supplement, and I sincerely wish you the best as you share them with your friends, family, and people you come across every single day. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.